to hamper their progress. I know they had a lot of capital improvement that they wanted to get done this year. And the Friends, you know, are to be commended for their continuing efforts with the annual, geez, I can't find it, Barry. What page was it? The zoo.
Zoo is on page 62, but there's not much on that.
Well, the zoo is on your revolving fund, you
No,
have
the-
to get out separate. So it's not in the general government book, Rick?
No, the personnel.
Oh, the salary sheet? Yeah, it's in Park and Forestry.
Oh, well, that's why I couldn't
Yep.
find it.
So, I haven't heard from Mr. Waite, but Mr. Cooper said he couldn't be here. So at this point, you're, as acting president, you're my second.
Okay.
Okay? So if you leave the floor, we no longer have a committee. Just understand that we're running short on.
Just nod on me and grab my
So
belt.
Barry, how
Okay.
could you tell which ones are on and which ones are not?
Ask for a brief.
She's on.
She just got put on.
Yeah.
If you need a brief recess, let me know.
So, for example.
I can tell when you start
Stephanie Mitchell,
stuttering.
50% revolving fund.
Right, my head hits the table.
25, you know what I mean?
59 is
100% revolving.
is Park
50,
Forestry Zoo.
And these other people?
Animal control's on 39. There's a little thing on zoo on page 62, but it's basically zeros. That's why Barry handed out the revolving funds, and I've asked him to explain it.
Where we stand? What page?
59, which is Park and Forestry.
So the other was 37?
No, 39
39.
for animal control. All right, Jim, back there? We're good? Thank you. 5, 4, 3. Call budget and appropriations to order at 5:31. Good evening. Welcome to our second night of budget hearings. Every year, after the mayor has submitted the budget to the city council, the Budget and Appropriations Committee conducts a series of hearings to review each department's budget requests, where there are significant changes, and to review where the budget's going for the next fiscal year. We're working on the fiscal 16 budget. So tonight we'll be talking with Park, Forestry, Zoo, Animal Control first, then Recreation, Personnel, Water, Wastewater, and finally Fire Department. Batting first, we have Sunny Almeida for Park and Forestry. We also have Terry from those departments. I know in the audience we have Butch Kiefer for Animal Control and Gene Benchmall for the Zoo. So I want to welcome you all here. As people need to move around, I appreciate your time, and we're going to try to stay as close to being on time structured as possible. Tonight, what I'd ask is if, first, Mr. Lacasse, if you could share with us any of the issues that we need to know regarding, I know we have the zoo revolving fund, if you want to wait on that, or you want to explain how that's going to work, because most of the zoo budget does not appear in our general government budget, because it's mostly operated through a revolving fund. But you let me know when you want to cover that.
Sure, and I think that, I'm going to let Sonny talk about Park and Forestry. I think that's the easiest way to do it.
Sure.
I will say that one of the biggest impacts of the Park and Forestry budget is the transition of the zoo director from general government over to the revolving fund. And then when Gene comes up with Sonny, we can talk about the revolving fund if you'd like.
That's fine. Thank you. Also, that Mr. Lacasse passed out are budget expenses to date for fiscal 15. So those are, right, these are the expenses, or these are?
What you have is FY 15, this current fiscal year, year-to-date for the departments that you'll be hearing from tonight. In addition to that, there's a second packet I passed out, which is the FY 16 zoo revolving fund, which we can talk about when Eugene gets up here.
Sure. So Sonny's budget is on page 59. 59. Sonny, welcome.
Thank you.
And welcome to all your staff, thank you. Any areas, Sonny, where you want to discuss any major ups, downs, or changes in your budget?
What we tried to do is to keep it as
level funded as possible. We already spoke a little bit about the salaries because of Gene's transition going back and forth. The other thing is we have it's for the, where is it, on what page? It's for the irrigation, that's the next big thing you'll see. That's what we added. Other than that, it's pretty close to being almost the same. Yeah, because 50% of the park now is under irrigation.
Okay.
And just turning it on and turning it off, and with these heads that you have to buy at $40 a piece, it's very, very expensive. So we asked the mayor to put that in. And
So that's repairs, irrigation?
yes,
Under purchase of services, 4,000?
right. And other than that, the other stuff is pretty close to being the same. You know, your heat and lights and stuff like that, they go all over the place. You never know where you're going to end up. You figure what we did this year, and can we battle it through and do the same thing for this year that we'll be working on. You know, and right now, it's just as an example of what could happen is we have a tractor and 2 trucks down right now. So, you know, thank God we did have some money left in those categories. See, with park and forestry, especially the park part, a lot of our spending starts in the spring. You look at our budget and say, wow, they got a lot of money left. That's not the case at all, because we gotta buy flowers and fertilizer and all that stuff, and this is the time it happens. Repairs of vehicles, sometimes it's during the winter when we have the snow and all that, but lo and behold, the bucket truck, the new one's busted, the roadside mower's busted, and one of the dump trucks. We've got 2 of the 3 covered, is that right, Terry?
We've got all 3.
All 3 covered? That's right. So
Okay.
we found the money and zigzagged it here and there, so, and those are big items.
Okay.
But other than that, it's a budget I think we can live with. I hope the city councilors believe that we can do it. You know, you go day by day with these budgets.
Right.
And you just, we know ahead of time what we're going to be facing, so that's why we do our budget, looking at it that way. What we spent in previous years and what we think will happen this year.
Sure.
Even, you know, we always say, well, you got a brand-new vehicle, that's gonna be a 20-year vehicle. Well, guess what? It didn't make it. But other than that, I have, unless you have questions, that's about all I...
The one area that I saw that you had put in for $500 for employee training, and that's been moved down to 30. Was there something special you wanted to have your staff?
Well, that's one thing I would really like to do this coming year, but I just don't want to go to listen to a bunch of people talk and say nothing. Terry is our new foreman, and he's very knowledgeable about a lot of the things we do already through college, but if there's any special programs that he and I think, I would like to send him, and I'd like to send Terry to some things too. So, but we'll work on that.
Okay.
It's not set in stone yet, what we're gonna do, but those are things, yes.
So you'd like to, maybe you'll find a way to cover it within your budget? Is that-
Right.
Okay. Mr. Conti?
So, Sonny, you haven't expended all of your money for maintenance of equipment, I'm assuming that the repairs to the vehicles are gonna drain all that.
Probably drain that
What
right
happened
out.
to the new truck? That is like 1 year old.
Yeah, well, you know, it's one of those things, this is why it's so important to have those vehicles checked. With the original truck, the one that took me for a flight, we were checking that one twice a year. Then the one that we kept for traffic lights and stuff, we'd have them tested twice a year. They start with a dielectric test, Terry, and as soon as they find something wrong, they stop. That has to be repaired before they go any further. As they started, where the boom sits in, is that what's correct?
Yeah, with the boom, where the 2 booms, the top boom and the bottom boom sit together, all the steel around it is cracked, and also the fiberglass. And they're actually going to, the company that built it, the boom out of Texas, is going to repair that for nothing. But the North American truck that we take it to in New Hampshire has to disassemble it and ship it to Texas. So it's gonna cost us $5,600.
And they take the whole boom
They
off,
take
put
the
it
whole
on
boom
a
off,
trailer
it's gotta go on
truck,
a trailer truck and go to
ship
Texas.
it down there.
It's the only place in the country
Sure,
that can fix it.
I got it. How could you predict that would happen? I mean, there's no way to predict that
Right,
that
I
would
mean, the
happen.
truck's
Oh, yeah,
3
you
years old.
can't, it's 3 years old, that's sad, that those things happen, but, at least they're taking care of that part of it. If they'd take care of the whole thing.
Yeah,
it'd
they're
be-
covering fixing the boom, which is probably around 20 or 30 grand.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Blair?
Answer my question, sir.
Okay. Mrs. Parikh?
Thank you. Do you have enough staff right now?
Enough
Do you have
staff?
enough staff to
Uh,
cover?
We're working on that, because of things that have been happening, no, we don't. But we're working on it, and the mayor's up to speed on what the needs are, and Terry and myself and Barry and the mayor have been talking about it, so we are working on that.
Excellent. And just one other thing.
Sure.
You guys did a beautiful job on the parks for all the ceremonies over the weekend. And we're very happy to have you as the second in command over there. And if I may say, probably your father's very proud. He's busted his buttons. I was talking to him the other day. And he's like, Heather, I want you to tell me if he's not doing a good job. It's not my job to do that, but he's doing just fine. So, but just while we had you here, I know that you're working on a tight budget, but you guys make the best of it. So thank you.
You know, when you get good people working with you, the tough times become easy because they put their best foot forward.
Absolutely.
It's been tremendous just to watch these ladies and gentlemen work and do their job. And when they have a ceremony like Memorial Day and they come into Cape Park and you look at the park and your buttons do burst.
Yeah, it was gorgeous. It was a phenomenal parade, and your park looked awesome from our perspective, and even after the people moved away, it still looked awesome, and so I really appreciate the extra effort you guys put forth.
Thank you.
Mr. Thibodeau?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sonny, for the general foreman under Park, in the booklet, it doesn't appear as if you have on your line item, you don't appear to have a salary for that position.
We had a general foreman,
Yeah.
and then when there was, we were making the change, the mayor and I, and we decided that we'd set that one aside because we're gonna have some promotions coming up when we do some replacing of people. So we slid that one down, and then we made we brought back the foreman job. And we left the title in because of the foreman, and I know it's going to work. That he'd have a place, or she would have a place to move back up again. If you start at the top and then you don't make it, it's tough bringing everybody back. So if you give a slot for them, and that's why that's shows the title with no money.
Okay, thank you. That was all I had, Mr. Chairman.
Anything else? Any other questions from my colleagues? Overall, your budget, because of moving the salary out, your budget's down for the year.
Yep.
So, but I appreciate, your conservative budgeting in order to get the vehicles repaired and get them back on the road and back into service. Thank your staff for the incredible job they're doing with the parks. I really do appreciate that, and all that they do. Keep up the good work. And when you need things, you know where to find us.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Unless you have anything else for us, we're good.
You guys have any?
Hey, he doesn't come to us very often for anything.
Hardly ever.
Next up, we have, with Sunny, we have animal control, which is a separate budget on animal control is on page 39. And then Barry will talk to us about the revolving funds with the zoo. So welcome Gene Benchamal and Butch Kiefer to the podium, as it were. Welcome. How are you?
Why don't you let Butch go?
Butch,
Gene will put it-
animal control, page 39. Let me switch my book around. So you're gonna get a new office pretty soon.
So,
What's the projected, any projected dates at this point?
it's in August.
August?
That's what he's looking.
Okay,
It's coming quick.
it's coming. No. Well, it was looking good. You gave us we had a tour from,
Every day it's something different.
I'm sure. But that was nice. I know I had a chance to tour it. I was able to bring my daughter through as well, and she's excited. She wants to volunteer at some point. So,
Good.
and I said, "Get your dog and cat fixed now, not at my house, thank you." But no, she is looking to do that. But it was looking incredible, and as I mentioned on camera already, your entrance area is as big as your whole animal control shelter. It feels that way. Mr. Conti, you had a question?
Yes, my question is for Butch. In your animal control budget, you've got just $225 for staff development. I read that the state was moving towards a certified animal control officer.
We've already gone through the certification course, so it's not something, but we can go and refresh, we can do a refresh course.
So you both now accredited?
Yeah, well, we got certified when we started, and then Carolyn, when she came on, she went through the course. It was I think a 12-week course.
Yeah.
So once we were already certified, we don't have to, we're kind of grandfathered in from the new rule because we've already been certified.
There's no continuing education mandate?
We can go for refresher courses if needed. And there are some courses for the new laws, et cetera. And usually, one of us will go to a seminar once a year. This year, we didn't get to any due to sickness, so illness.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, Butch, you're leading off. Are there any areas, major ups, downs, or issues that we need to be made aware of?
I don't think so. I think it's pretty much level funded. It's kind of going into the unknown right now, once we get into the new building. So,
I do notice that your overtime budget's down, but you have a different overtime line.
for the holidays, yes.
That's just,
That's a big thing, because the people that have to have people work on a holiday, that eats up a lot of your overtime money. And it's never really known why, where's all this overtime money go?
Okay.
And that's one of the biggest.
Because we're a 7-day shift.
Yeah.
And there's 2 of us, so someone's gonna be there on the holiday.
So you'll see that throughout the budgets in FY16, where the auditor thought it was prudent to break out holidays, snow overtime, for example, to better understand where those overtime dollars are being spent. So that's what you see in the animal control.
so it's the money is still there. It's the same dollar value, but
Those two
for
are for
accounting,
$50,000, yes.
for accounting purposes, it's just separating it out. Okay.
Now it makes sense.
Mrs. Perica?
My only other question, Jim Castro was kind enough to send out some questions that he had where he wouldn't be here tonight. And this is one that I found to be interesting as well, is that there was no change for heating and lights and things like that. I just didn't know if there was estimations, whether it would be, I'm sure that they're
We
all
don't.
energy efficient.
We don't have, and that's a great question, and I know the mayor and I discussed it, and we know we're gonna have a new building sometime in FY16. And that's one of the things that we're just gonna have to take a look at when we open that building up, just like the DPW building. That will be open during FY16, but as you'll see in Public Works, we didn't account for that. We know we're gonna have to deal with that, particularly in the wintertime. So between October and December, for the animal shelter, and then in December, when the Public Works building opens up, we know we're gonna have different bills, different electrical bills, different heating bills. It's a new building. What we wanna do is get an idea of what we're dealing with, before we begin to really be able to budget the remainder of the year.
And so we'll just have to go by way of maybe transfers or whatnot, once we get an idea of,
Well, yeah, keep in mind that as we're shutting down and demolishing the DPW building, we don't have any heating or electrical bills there. We'll be transitioning over to the new building, so we'll have available funds. Is it gonna be enough? No, it's not, because it's a much bigger building.
Sure.
Same with the animal shelter. When we transition out of the old shelter to the new shelter, we're gonna have available funds. It's not gonna be enough, but, so we know we're coming back to you for additional
Well,
funds.
if I may, Mr.
Mr.
Chairman,
Mr.
it may actually work in our favor, because the new animal shelter is gonna be a lot tighter than the present animal shelter. So, like you say, you're gonna have to wait and see what's gonna happen. You might find out it costs you the same amount for the heat, even though the building is larger.
Wouldn't that be
Because it's
wonderful?
built better.
Yeah, I mean, and that's true. And
Yeah.
what we did as part of this project is we solicited National Grid to provide us with energy-efficient equipment, lighting, fixtures,
Yeah.
things like that. So that's all incorporated into this new design as well.
Excellent.
Looks good.
Okay. So, And you have two relatively new vehicles?
An 07 and a 2014.
So the 14 one I saw within the last week or so. That's why I was thinking about that one. But the other one was 04?
07.
07. Okay. So those are, and you guys always drive them until they die?
Yes.
Yes.
Well
absolutely.
maintained.
Yes. I've seen it. Mr. Conti?
If we could just revisit the overtime and the holiday overtime line item, because I would think that if Rotary mandated that we do that we would do it in all departments, and I see we haven't done it in all departments. I think the net impact is that the animal control overtime still is down from what we budgeted from last year.
Two answers to that.
Yeah,
It wasn't broken out in departments that don't work holidays, so
police department.
that does, and that's broken out on the,
All right, I just looked at it and I didn't see it, so you'll
believe it
show
is.
it to me later.
But some departments don't work holidays, and so that's why you wouldn't see it there. Insofar as the overtime is concerned, there was we've tweaked the overtime policy during the course of FY15, so we think that we can meet the $15,000 requested for 15, broken out as you see, 10,175 to regular overtime and 4825 to holiday overtime. We think we can meet that with this new tweaking of the overtime policy, and we're going to try our hardest to do that. You know, nothing's for sure, and Butchie and Carolyn get called out from time to time on off hours, and you know, it's an emergency, they need to respond to that. It's hard to budget for that, so we're starting with $15,000 as a starting point, but we understand that even with this new tweaking of the policy, there may be a need for additional funds.
So in the tweaking of the policy, was the intent to try to either control the overtime budgets a little bit more carefully, or to understand better why the overtime funds were getting so large?
It's sort of both. What we try to do with the overtime policy is to better define what constitutes an emergency call that must be responded to in off hours and what does not. And so a lot of that it's coordination effort between Butch and Carolyn and the dispatchers and police. So we wanted to make sure everyone was on the same page, and we think we've gotten to that point that it's clearer now than it was a year ago.
I can tell you, it's already working.
Good.
It's working well. The police department stepped right up and with Butchie and the way we're doing it now,
Well, your department doesn't have the problem as much as other departments do. I'm happy to hear that there's a policy being established.
People call up about it. You wouldn't imagine the calls we get. But
Oh, I
now we
would.
have a
I
list
could.
of
I could.
what we go out for and what we don't go out for. And that's the big thing. And the dispatchers have that list.
Getting cats out of trees.
And boy, it's,
The deer
so
call.
far, for the last few months, it's been working well.
Good. Thank you.
Any other questions for Butch? Butch, thank you for your efforts and all the work that you do. Yeah,
Thank you.
and good luck as we move forward to the new building. We appreciate that. Looking forward to opening.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Jean?
Not as much as he is.
Oh, I bet. Now, Jean, Barry passed out the revolving funds. Barry is going to go over that with us a little bit, and you can talk to us about projections and how the park's been running and things like that. So I appreciate you coming.
So what you see when you look at the zoo revolving fund that I passed out is you'll see that it's broken into cost centers. For example, on the first page, you'll notice that the account number is 2607. But as you scroll through and you reach page 4, you'll see that the account number has changed to 2607 CON. That's the concession stand cost center. You scroll down even more, you'll find 2607 EDU. That's the education cost center. And then further on is the gift shop, 2607 GIF. So this breaking of the cost centers in the zoo has been very, very helpful because it allows Jean and Sonny and myself and the mayor to better see which cost centers are making money and which are not. Now, it's not to suggest that every cost center should be a net zero. In other words, whatever the gift shop brings in should be equal to their expenses. The gift shop is a perfect, or the concession stand, I should say, is a good example of where expenses are here and revenue is here. So the general zoo, maybe not so much, because it relies almost entirely on general zoo fees, and feeding machines, things like that. So sometimes you'll see the expenses of the general zoo up here and the revenue down here. But these cost centers, where they have a surplus, will help subsidize those other cost centers. If it gets to the point that a cost center simply cannot sustain itself, obviously, we will sit down with Gene and Sonny and talk about what we can do to better adjust educational fees, for example, if that was the situation. So that's the other benefit of the cost centers. But I wanted to point that out to you because you might look at the revolving fund in front of you and see that, you know, the revenue for the general zoo was put in at $494,444. Well, we've had banner years that have been approaching that. In FY12, Gene and Sonny brought in over $485,000. So we know we can do it. But a lot of it's dependent on weather, you know, so we don't know exactly. So when we fund the general zoo revenue at 494, primarily that does two things. That is a projection as to what we expect for zoo revenues. But more importantly, it offsets the exact expenses for general zoo, and that's the cost center method that we have to utilize. But I wanted to point out that the general zoo revenue projection of 494 is in the ballpark of what Gene and Sonny have experienced in some of the better years. This year, at least with my projection, I think that we would approach over about $450,000, and now that's with being closed, I think, the month of January. February. So, you know, even then, we had some revenue loss then. But, you know, so that's an example of where we're in the ballpark of reaching our revenue projections. But even if we fall short, the other cost centers that are more profitable, like concession, like gift, will subsidize general zoo revenue. Okay, I hope that's clear. So obviously, one of the biggest additions to the zoo revolving fund this year is putting the zoo director, Gene, over into the revolving fund 100%. And we felt that we could do that and still let Gene do what she needs to do to run a very successful zoo. Primarily because of the carryover. It's over $1 million she's carrying over from 15 to 16. That's a very healthy carryover amount.
Revolving fund.
In the revolving fund, yes. So that's why we think we can do this, and without any risk. Now, as we go forward and we go into subsequent years, to Mr. Conti's question earlier, we can look at putting other employees who are now in general government over to the zoo revolving fund or not. That's the luxury. We don't have to. We're carrying those employees, some at 50%, some at 100% on general government right now. But this was one step towards making this particular revolving fund more self-sufficient, which is arguably the definition of a revolving fund. It's supposed to be self-sufficient based upon the fees that it generates. Not all revolving funds can do that. This is an example of one that can't yet.
But it's getting closer and closer.
We took a step towards that.
Yes, yes.
Parking was another one. We took a step with parking towards putting more of the general government expense over to the parking revolving fund. That's my department. That hurt, but I'm going to make it work.
Yeah. Mr. Conti?
Yeah, what I want to say is that I've been around long enough to notice that it's a management issue, and that the zoo is being managed better now than it has been in the past. And I don't think I need to say anything more.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, you're doing okay with the income and the projections as you move forward?
I think so. I think it's not unachievable.
Okay.
You know, we run a pretty tight ship there. We look at all our costs. We are always looking at ways to improve the zoo or bring in revenue generators. One example is we built a new monitor exhibit. We wanted to pay for itself, or at least add some revenue, so we built a sluice, and now we sell the bags of sand so kids can do some mining and find their treasures. So with that revenue, it sort of offsets the cost that it took to build that exhibit. So I'm always looking for a way to help balance exhibits. So, and the staff's very much on board with that. They get that this is a business. And the deal is, the staff does their job, and they let me run the finances so I can make sure that they have all the tools to get their job done properly.
Okay. Questions from my colleagues? Mrs. Parika, I see some wheels turning there.
Must be the smoke coming out of my ears. I was just looking, do you have a part-time vet?
Yes, we do.
Okay, because I was just looking at the difference, because I remember that from, I think it was last year that we brought them on part-time.
Yes.
So I was just looking at the difference from the revised budgets. That's all. I was surprised I was remembering stuff myself.
Okay.
That's all.
Okay. So, any other questions from my colleagues? When was the last time you adjusted fees over there?
It has been at least 5 years. It's been 2010 since the last time we adjusted the fees, and cost of living has increased, and I think it's something that we are seriously going to look at maybe for the beginning of next year. We offer so many amenities to the zoo, and we don't charge. Once you come in the zoo, everything is at your disposal. So with those fees increasing, I think it's fair to say we need to look at that and adjust accordingly.
You gave a very good presentation last time, and so you have a basis to start from, and so you know how to do it.
Yes.
If you're going to present to us, that was a good presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Bring the white alligator back. Bring the white alligator back.
Every time
Having one of those, like, it's a big draw.
That's
People
right.
get all excited and
the white alligator, the white lion.
naming the lion, stuff like that.
Zip line, yes.
Zip line. Go across the pond on a zip line.
Yes, that's what I want.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Barry, we can set that up. Some night you
I
and
think
me.
some
we'll
people
do it.
might pay to watch you do that, actually.
Cut it, right? Right over the line, Jane.
Yeah, so one of the things that zoos do to bring in revenue and to bring in different components, and I know Barry and I have talked about it, and it's something that's probably off the table, but, we may look at it here and there, is having something like a zip line and a rope course, where the rope course will actually take you into the exhibit. So you're now inside the kangaroo exhibit, or you have to maneuver your way across the otter exhibit, and you look down, there's the otters, and, things like that. So it's something that we're just looking at,
Toying with.
just thinking.
You're pretty, ingenious with how you do with Zoo Moon and the splash pad and different things like that. You really do a really great job of drawing families in.
Oh, thank you.
So, we love it.
I know Brennan's going over for a field trip, 5th grade, going over for a field trip coming up.
Very nice.
So I'm looking forward to hearing all about that. Any other questions or comments from my colleagues? Jean, you have anything else for us that you need to make sure we get out?
I don't think so. I'm sure I'll be coming to you sometime in the late winter and
Okay.
discuss possible fee increases. But
Okay.
other than that, everything looks good.
All right. Well, we appreciate all you do for the zoo. It's been great to see that through its renditions and how it's grown over the last few years, and it is a jewel for our city. So thank you, and thank your staff.
Thank you very much.
Sonny, anything else for us?
I think that's it.
You look proud as punch right there. You really do. Thank you for all you do. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Recreation, Dennis Walsh. Dennis is on page 57, the Recreation Department on 57. Welcome home.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good to see you. 57. Recreation.
Oh.
Yeah, you know how all this goes. You get the chance to share with us any major ups, downs, and changes that you'd like to bring to our attention. The counselors will have a chance to ask you any questions, and we'll move from there. So welcome and thank you for coming in.
Thank you for having me. There's not many, in fact, there's not any major changes. The budget is relatively flat. I think it's up just about 2% over fiscal year 15 projections. And a little part of that is that I've been trying to shift more to my revolving fund as well and take care of some capital projects, smaller items through the revolving fund. Fortunate to have, not as healthy as the park department and the zoo department, but fortunate to have, some funds in the revolving fund available to do some of these smaller things.
And pools are all set to open?
All pools are scheduled to open on Saturday, June 27th at 11 a.m. And looking forward to that season, a lot of other summer programs.
Yes. Mr. Conti?
Dennis, I'm trying to figure out why your salaries are up 10%. Are you filling a position
Well,
that's partially empty?
yeah, what happened this year, if you look at our salary and wages, we had some employees who were out of work, and uncompensated out of work. So what we did is shifted money out of salary and wages into seasonal, and we brought in someone under the seasonal this year. So you'll notice that seasonal, I think, is at 32,000 this year, but it's going way back down to the
300.
6,300. So it's just a shift between where we're paying an employee.
Thank you.
And like revised 2014 was 436, and it's more in line, your 2016 budget is more in line with 2014 than 2015. You see that?
Yes.
Okay.
But you see, that's about 10% more.
I agree. I agree. And
But when combined with the seasonal,
Correct. Yep. I didn't do that. Thank you for pointing that out.
okay. Mrs. Parika?
The only thing, I'm hopeful that our lighting budgets will be in a better balance and less than 16 cents per kilowatt hour this year. Do you think you have enough in there? Because we just did an appropriation to help you cover some costs.
yeah, I had sent a request through the mayor to the council. Did you say it was approved?
Yeah, it was.
So,
Well, I'm sorry, I brought it out of committee. It'll be
Okay.
approved.
I have enough, I transferred some internally, and plus what will be approved hopefully by the council at the full meeting next week would give me enough to get through this year. And then for next year, it's one of those things where we have a tight budget, and in the discussions with Barry and the mayor, I said, that's one of the things that I think is the electric, is that some of the revenues that I bring in come from renting out the Bartek Center to groups. Well, maybe some of that funding should go to pay for the electricity. So those are that's one of the things that I think it's a little lower than what the actual costs are going to be, but I think we're planning on using some of the revolving funds to pay that, and rightfully so.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, because the lights are on at the Bartek till like 11 o'clock at night every night.
Something every night. Yeah.
Yes. That's good.
So I think that's a good way to plan ahead for that.
That's a good thing, too.
Yeah.
That is great.
Have,
that people are using
Have
it.
it busy.
So, anything else from my colleagues? Any areas?
One
Hold
other
on.
thing, we should drop
Go
the
ahead.
pest control from 13 to 500.
No, I don't think I
Right.
dropped pest
Is that
control
me?
that much. That might be the staff development,
Oh, it was, excuse me, thank you, sorry.
and that's just
Because why?
well, because staff development, I found every year is that, we put these things on that we'd like to go do, and it ends up that we do what is mandatory, that, the certified pool operator is really what, we have one person who's up next year, so if you look, history will show that we transfer the money out of that almost every year, so,
Why fund what you're not?
There you go.
Yeah, I understand. Mr. Conti?
Dennis, I remember in the past you being the victim of rapidly rising chemical prices, and I can't find it now in the line items.
For the pools, you mean?
Is that what it is?
Is it pools or fertilizers, or?
I don't see fertilizer.
It's,
under rec grounds, maybe, is fertilizers under rec supplies, rec grounds, I think it's a $35,000 line item, and we're level funding that.
yes.
Heating, lights, professional services is the
It's,
catch-all.
it's on the general fund.
Yep.
Fund 163010005460012.
546012.
Yeah, next page over.
Supplies, recreations, grounds, 35,000.
Sorry, it was on the page. Thank you.
And you use all but $7.30 this year, according to this book. And So you have 30, and you've budgeted 35. And when you've needed it, you've come to us for, to transfer money around if you've had extra elsewhere to use for additional fertilizers, lime,
Correct.
materials.
And unlike the park, we pre-ordered our fruit and lime, et cetera, so we have all of ours in for this year to make sure we get through to July 1st.
Good.
The only other thing that I would add, it's not budget-related, but just make sure everyone, the public and the councilors know that we'd love to have you. Our grand reopening of the Briggs Playground is scheduled for Sunday, June 7th. And from 2 to 4, we're having a cookout with hamburgers and hot dogs and drinks, et cetera, and special ribbon cutting ceremony and a couple of other ceremonies that are kind of unknown to the public at this time, which are going to be awesome. And just, I don't know if anyone, old-timers from the east side, if you go drive by the playground, it's unbelievable. It's a great investment by the city. We got a state grant, our Common Backyards grant, the Briggs Trust Fund, which there are, I think, 3 trust fund commissioners, as well as Ethel. I think Ethel's part of the vote on that. And then also city funding went into this, $500,000, and I'll tell you, it is one awesome playground, one awesome park. And it'll be a great grand opening that day, and want to make sure everyone knows that you're welcome to attend, and we'd like to have you there.
So June 7th,
Sunday, June 7th, from 2 to 4.
2 to 4. Sunday, June 7th, 2 to 4. Mrs. Parika?
It's all a chatter on the school bus. All the kids are losing their minds. They're like, we can't, it's so awesome. Have you seen it? So people are,
I must say
the
that
neighborhood kids are pretty jazzed up, so.
they're over there, they're using it, and we just had the final walkthrough today. Everything's approved, and I'll tell you, I have a great staff. Cliff and the guys do an unbelievable job and keep all the fields, and we're going to make sure we take care of this one, and that's one of the reasons why you had the request for an appropriation for the cameras. We're going to have 4 cameras here to make sure, monitoring to make sure that the kids take care of it. And we're trying to start a police athletic league, basketball league there during the week for the kids in the neighborhood only, to kind of, with the police department. So, we're trying to do a lot of things to make sure that they continue to appreciate what we've given them, like they always have over at the East Side Pool with the Briggs Playground Pool.
Regarding the cameras, that was a question we had talked about on Tuesday night, was that, do you know that you had requested the remaining balance of $1,800+? Do you remember the total cost of the purchase of the cameras?
It was $7,400 and I think $2, or $7,400 or something.
But you had the money from somewhere else? Or?
From the revolving fund,
From the
yes.
revolving fund?
Yeah.
Because you had requested the 1,800 and change?
Yeah, whatever was left, we felt it was an appropriate use to
Yep.
help protect the investment. And then I think I saw a little bit of that, and Councilor Conti mentioned that, we already take care of paying the monitoring fee in South Attleboro at South Attleboro Vets, and we'll do that as well over here.
Will it be an additional fee
No.
for this one, or it'll be the same fee?
There'll be an
or-
additional fee because it's a different place, but it'll come out of my revolving fund to take
Revolving
care of
fund.
that. Yeah.
So that answers the question, both questions from Tuesday night.
Yeah.
You can get those done.
What's nice about that is anytime, as Councilor Conti said, anytime, day or night, if I get a call something's going on, or if I drive by and see something, or if anybody does, you can go to the website, and there it is, and see what's going on.
Very good.
Actually, anybody can. Anybody who has a smartphone or a computer or a tablet, you just punch in the correct address, and there it is.
Very good. That's awesome.
Good investment.
So that you never know who's watching.
These kids over there know who's watching, believe me.
Dennis, I want to thank you and your staff for the wonderful job you do with the fields and the recreation areas and the rec center, the summer program, for the kids that go through that. My daughter's experienced that. And I want to thank you for all that that you do with that. It's been a great experience, and I want to thank you for that.
Thank you. It's our pleasure.
Peter.
Nice shirt, Dennis. Oh, I got one of those.
Let's say that's the master shirt. Matching master shirts. Okay.
So many jokes right there. I'll just
Okay.
keep it all
All
quiet
right.
right there.
We're done.
That's right.
Thank you, Pete. Thank you, Dennis.
Absolutely. Aren't you guys proud? I'm learning.
Next up on The Price is Right. Hey, Shannon.
Feeling better? Great.
We have Personnel Department.
I'm out of quarantine now.
You're out of quarantine? As long as you're down at the end of it, you're good with me.
That's why I have strep throat.
Okay. How are you?
Very good, how are you?
Good, welcome.
Thank you.
Have you been through these before?
No.
No, well, welcome to your first budget
You
hearing.
didn't bring a, vet- you didn't bring, you didn't bring a vest with you?
I'm ready.
Barry will protect you.
Barry used to actually sit here at one point.
Page 18.
Yes, the Personnel Department's on page 18. What we ask with your budget is that you give us any major ups, downs, changes that we need to be made aware of, significant things that are affecting the overall budget or your department budget, because I know there's a piece, I think, in your department that affects the entire budget. Right. And then questions from my colleagues, and we'll move on from there. So, page 18.
Okay, of course, the major piece is the healthcare portion, as you know. I'm happy to say that there isn't much of a change there, just a slight increase across the board, mostly for those accounts, which is a good sign. You're going to see a change in our drug testing line, up $5,000, and that's because we are now doing police drug testing, and that's absorbed within my department. So you'll see that jump from $3,000 last year's budget to this budget number of $8,000.
Okay, I see that there.
Other than that, there's not, quite frankly, there's not a large jump, particularly considering healthcare and you're self-funded. We had an increase in the rates of about 6.4%, so we adjusted those lines accordingly, close to that, and a slight decrease actually in dental, which is a good sign.
Okay.
So those lines really haven't jumped all that much considering you have to project those claims.
Okay. Mr. Conti, you had a question?
Only about the drug testing. We're doing a lot more drug testing, or drug testing has gotten more expensive?
We're going to be doing drug testing within the police department, which hadn't been done before.
Got it.
So that's the new figure.
That was negotiated.
That was a negotiation.
Yep, yep.
Okay.
And I only have a comment that we're fortunate that our healthcare only went up 6.4%, and Taunton went up 10.9%.
Sure.
And it's an annual review, so you know that's kind of like the elephant in the room.
Is Taunton self-insured?
No,
No.
I think
GIS?
it's exactly the same as Attleboro.
Well, we're self-insured.
Oh, then they are self-insured.
Working in another community that was self-insured, it's always it's a balancing act. It's difficult to judge sometimes because you're really basing it on those claims, and you have to project best you can.
And our overall rates have not gone up significantly over the last 2 or 3 years. They've been pretty flat.
I would be safe to say they've stayed well below the industry standards, so to speak.
Yeah. And so this, eventually, you know, gravity takes off and we have to rise with it. They would have to rise, so it would be expected.
Well, but I just want to add that the employees have been great as far as making minor adjustments throughout the year on benefits, and that's what helps keep not only the rates down, but it helps in the OPEB category as well.
Correct. Very good. Again, Mr. Conti?
So in the salary line item, we were paying our consultant out of that line, correct, Barry?
We were paying the consultant out of professional services account.
Let me catch up with you, hold on.
Sure,
Okay,
that's
yep,
in
I
the
got it. All right, yep, there it is.
So you'll see a 0 there. And what we did is we still believe that there's going to be a need, as there always is throughout the year, for specialty counsel, even though we're going to have city solicitor in-house.
Yep.
So what we did is we moved that $25,000 to the citywide professional services.
Okay. And then the other question I had was, on workman's comp, that's really something you're just forecasting, but
It's the
cannot
same
predict.
idea. It works. It's the same idea. It's a self-funded.
Yeah,
It has to be. It has to be.
so we throw in 100,000 just as a placeholder, so to speak.
Again, well, we had some experiences that are off the books that we know that won't be carried. So we kind of figured that would go down a little bit. Something else could happen, but
Of course.
we don't know that. So, but we know have some experience that is now has left those books, so we know that those won't be carried forward.
And what is the PDP MedRx?
Sure. The PDP is the prescription portion of the MedX claims.
Wow, doubled?
Since 14?
Let's see.
Wow.
And
I'm trying to look at the line.
it's
Portion, right?
1152,
517153.
155,
517155.
155.
PDP med
More
prescription.
than doubled.
Ouch.
Yes.
14.
Yeah, more than doubled since 2014. And that's for what?
That's
Prescriptions?
prescription coverage for, you're talking about the Part B section of the Medicaid. This is the supplement, partially is the drug subsidy portion of that. So that number has changed, yes.
Interesting.
And that's that required stuff that you just kind of look at it and say,
Grin and bear it.
And
ouch.
things are gonna change, with the Affordable Care Act in the future too. So you're gonna see a lot more changes, one way or the other, unfortunately. We have to prepare for that.
Okay.
That's good.
Yeah. Mrs. Parika?
And I'm sure this isn't gonna make anyone necessarily feel better who's made concessions, but as an individual who was privately funded, I had Tufts before I took the benefit here when I became a city councilor. When my husband carried the medical insurance, it was crazy. Like, I get my mail order meds, it's $9 for a 3-month thing. Like, I feel like I won the lottery. I'm like, woo, I was just saying this to him yesterday. So I know that everyone is bearing a burden and making some adjustments. It's still by far an incredible value for the city and for the individuals here in the community, because the savings, like, our medical expenses for a family for 5 were outrageous. It was like $25,000 a year for us simply to have medical insurance for a healthy family. Yeah.
Miss Hegby?
Thank you, Ellen, for coming in, and Barry. Before I had brought this up, do we have any incentive for people not to take the health insurance if they have a loved one
buyout?
in another, like a stipend or something, to say, hey, we're spending this much money, but if you don't take it, we'll give you $1,000 or $2,000, something like that? Because I know in some other communities,
We don't have that. I know that.
North Smithfield, I believe,
Right.
like, say, a policeman.
Some
he
communities
said-
have a buyout, they call it, if you don't take it, but we don't have that here.
It's certainly something we can always take a
Yeah.
look at.
You never know, because because sometimes people it might come down to that, where if my loved one was a policeman somewhere else.
Sort of an opt-out stipend.
Like, something like that, because I know some people, one couple I know, one's a teacher and one's a policeman,
Right.
and they opt out
Correct,
from one
yes.
community to another. Just, food for thought, that's all.
Any other questions from my colleagues?
Are we going to discuss the,
You can bring up, I don't have Mr. Castro's printout, so
I'm talking about this. We're going
that's,
to discuss that tonight, or was it that way, we'll wait for another time?
that would be something we would, that's not under Owen's, is it part of the personnel?
Hasn't brought down yet to us. I don't know.
Yeah, that's in,
It's a committee, right?
Yeah, but it hasn't been.
We're having a committee meeting, he's come, before,
the question is, the constituent services, it's down as, because it's in the budget, but that position is in personnel?
right, because I wasn't going to bring it up last Tuesday,
Right.
even if I was sick or not, but then Linda brought to my attention, because I was going to wait a couple weeks and do research, and Linda had brought up there might be a constraint because it's a line item in the budget, so even if the position then was created, we don't have to fund it. But I also have some questions too, and I know I'm going to call the mayor, he's out.
Yeah,
not
I'm
here,
also
so-
my comments for the council meeting.
But do you think that would be something tonight?
I don't,
or- 'cause
I'm not thinking that's, other than because that's not in Owen's department, that's in the
Right.
mayor's department,
Yeah.
we would have the mayor back down.
6:30 Tuesday, I did call for a committee meeting to talk about that, and then I did send out another email saying he's coming in, thank you. So
Yeah.
is that okay, Tuesday?
Oh, yeah, I didn't want to, if tonight was going to be the night that we were going to talk about it, since Owen was here, I didn't want to miss the opportunity
Yeah.
to do that, that's all.
I would have called for a committee meeting tonight, but not everyone would be here or whatever, so I thought it'd be more appropriate Tuesday.
It's-
Okay?
And
Okay.
it's,
Okay, thank you.
Owen is coming in Tuesday night.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right, so we'll have the
Okay.
opportunity at
But-
that time to go over.
Because that's, I mean, it's in the budget, but the creation of the position is more
Yeah.
in your committee. So I really think it's crossing over
So
the.
Tuesday?
Okay, no, that's why I asked you that way.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I do.
Thank you
Okay.
for asking, though.
And if it's, if it's not something that eventually is approved, then if it's in the budget, we can always ask that the funding be removed.
Right.
So,
Correct,
Okay. All right,
if we agree.
yeah, we agree,
okay.
or don't, whatever.
Do you have anything else for us, Owen?
Nope, that's it.
All right, your overall, your budget's up because of the health insurance piece, and, but I think it's as tight as it can be. Any other areas you're all right with staffing and everything's
Right now, we're fully staffed.
fully staffed?
But yeah, it's good. It's good
Good
stuff.
to see you here, Owen.
It's, I gotta say, it's been a pleasure to work with everybody. Everyone's been very cooperative and helpful. I'm just very grateful that staff, my own staff plus citywide, has been really great to work with. So I'm very-
We're grateful.
It took so much to find you. I'm serious.
Couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a pleasure to have you here.
I appreciate
Because
that. Thanks.
it beats, I mean, I'm speaking, I think, for the council, because we're on record as saying that we wanted to have a full-time position here.
Sure.
And delighted to see you here.
Well, I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
How about coming from Rhode Island to Mass? Is it a big difference, or, because we had talked about
There are
that.
changes, yeah. There are changes. There's some things are the same, but some of the procedures are a little bit different.
So is Jan basically gone now, or just,
She's finishing the consulting through the end of June, and
okay,
that's it. But it's been a great help.
awesome.
Very good.
Yes. Thanks.
Well, thank you, staff. Thank you for all you do.
Appreciate that.
Appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.
Thanks, so.
Thank you.
Barry, your box is getting bigger over there. instead of smaller.
Well, if you've seen his office, he's gonna need a bigger
No, I
office
know,
pretty soon.
it's like, is that what we're putting you in at the end of days, just a cardboard
me up in
thing?
there and
Okay.
The stuff all over the floor, and, ooh. The last time I was in is a path.
But you know where everything is, though.
I do, don't touch anything.
Don't touch anything.
We get to move to the next book for water and wastewater, and we're gonna welcome Paul Kennedy.
Which one would you like to do first?
I'll let Paul decide.
Go water first.
Water first. Water is at the back end. So water starts on page 1 of the back side of the book.
That's right.
Well, Paul, you're superintendent of both now,
Yes.
so welcome. As you know, what we've asked you to do in the past is let us know where there's major ups, downs, and changes. If there's new staff or new issues coming up that are going to affect your budget, and you can bring that to our attention. We'll do water, then we'll do wastewater, but let us know where there's major changes and things that are going to affect your budget, so that we can, we definitely appreciate the fact that you've moved forward without raising the water or wastewater rates within the city, so we appreciate that. So, but let us know what's going on with the budget. But thanks for coming in.
You're welcome. Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to note some of the accomplishments within the water department within the last 5 months. Since April 29th, we have been able to repair 23 fire hydrants that have been out, part of the hydrants that have been out. We weren't able to dig into the ground the first week of April. There was still frost in the ground. So starting April 29th, we started working on them, and I'm happy to say that we've got 23 done so far. I believe there's about 23 more that need to be addressed, but at least 20 of those were hydrants that were affected during this past winter.
Okay.
So we're doing well with the hydrants. I'm hoping that shooting for by the fall, all the hydrants will be back in service.
Very good.
We also purchased 600 hydrant flags, and we're going to start installing those in the fall. We're going to start installing those on Route 152 and Route 123. And after they're installed, we'll be looking to purchase more. There was a notice of noncompliance that was looming over the city due to a noncompliance issue regarding a failure to complete a cross-connection surveys on all the buildings within the backflow, that have backflow preventers. And I'm happy to report that 90% of the cross-connection surveys are complete, and soon this noncompliance issue will go away.
Very good.
The Wading River project, east and west basins, are 80% complete and should be back up and running in the beginning of July. That project's going well. Hoppin Hill Reservoir Dam design is ongoing, and the construction is scheduled to start in the fall. The design phase of New Orleans Pond West Street Storage and Maintenance Building is wrapping up. The bidding process is completed, and a contractor is going to be chosen soon. Also, funds were appropriated through the council to take care of 5 projects that needed to be addressed in the department. Concrete repairs to Orleans Pond Dam is one of them. Concrete repairs to the stairs at the water plant pretreatment facility. We have a contractor on board. We already had the bids for the electrical feed system at the water treatment plant for the pretreatment, which is going to be starting soon. We'll get that squared away. We're going to remove the spent carbon and inspect the backwash overflow tank from our filters. And we're going to replace the variable frequency drives on the ozone booster pumps. In addition, the department is looking at the appropriation of funds to move forward on the design and repair, rehabilitation of the Oak Hill water storage tank. We're looking at construction tentatively beginning in the spring of 2016. This will eliminate any water quality issues that could arise if the project wasn't completed in a timely manner. I just want to give a special thanks to the mayor and the city council for backing these projects. I appreciate your backing, and that we could move forward on these projects and get things done.
Absolutely. I know Mr. Churchill has always said, and we certainly agree, that water is probably our biggest resource within the community. And you're charged with protecting and making sure that we have ample supply and that it's in good quality. And so we thank you for that. And so we've shown that support by backing these projects to keep, your personnel safe with the concrete areas, as well as the water quality for all those projects. So thank you, too. Mr. Conti?
Yes, Paul, the Luther Dam pump, is that done?
No, what we did up there was the expansion tank that's up there was leaking, and we had a welder go up and weld the fitting below. Water was just spitting out of there. We had that fixed. That still needs to be addressed. There isn't much left of that tank. We were looking at quotes on replacing the tank. We have quotes to replace the tank, but while they were there, they said that below the building, there's a 42-inch? 48-inch line running underneath the building that has to be addressed and replaced, and there's a valve under there also that has to be reworked. So we're waiting to get prices on that, but that hasn't been.
I'm not sure we're talking about the same place. At the Luther Dam, there's a building that had 2 pumps in it, 2 very large pumps. One of them was operating, and the other one could not be operated because of erosion to the piping and the failure of the pump. Did we replace that pump?
One pump was reworked, right?
It was actually due to the tank leaking, that we weren't
okay,
able
so-
to use both pumps at the same time.
So we are talking about the same thing, but I
Yeah.
just had a misunderstanding of what the issue was. So that's going to be on our next year's capital improvement plan.
Yes.
And you didn't mention the Manchester Reservoir, but somehow I remember us discussing work or redesign being done to that.
Manchester Reservoir, there's work that needs to be done on 2 dikes. Is it South Dike and West Dike?
South and east.
South and East. We have some work that needs to be done on those dikes. That's in the capital improvements plan, but that hasn't been addressed
So that's a
at this
future
time.
year.
Yes.
And the Wading River, that seems to be coming along faster than we had planned.
It's coming along very good. You know, like I say, it's probably 80% complete. They finished installing the main from the beds to the pumping station. It's going to be chlorinated tomorrow, I believe. And I think are they still working on the pumps?
Both well pumps are out.
Both well pumps are out. They're going to put the new well pumps in. One well pump wasn't that old, so that one's going back in. The other one's being replaced. But the project's going well. I'm expecting beginning of July, that'll be up and running. And that will definitely help us out on our water situation because we're getting low, you know, things are.
You've got a lot going on.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of things going on in the water department. I'm really impressed with the schedule. Regarding the budget, this is no fault of yours, but I note that your prescription budget is up 400%. You know, we were talking about this just moments ago in personnel. Wow. That's a very dramatic increase. And like I said, it's no control of yourself. It's an outside factor that's affecting your budget.
Which one is that?
It's line 517155.
TDP medics prescription.
Yeah.
Wow.
They must have made a change to how we factor that, because it's all different from 2014 to 15.
Went from 39 to, you know, it's
3,900 to 12,004.
yeah, that's from 2014 to 2016.
Correct.
And the jump from 14 to 15 was significant. So,
Really don't have any control over
You don't
that.
have any control.
Those are-
one of
those
those
are
grin, as
medication.
Barry said a little while, grin and bear it. Okay?
But I think it's a similar jump that you saw in the overall personnel department.
Yes.
Yeah, it is. Except it's more dramatic.
Yeah.
Mrs. Parika?
Thank you. I'm noticing like in what was requested and then what you're recommending, there's like huge discrepancies between them. Like specifically for like, am I wicked echoey all of a sudden? The 521020, the lights, there's like $100,000 difference there. We're cutting professional services. The requested was $226,000 down to 70. And same for engineering, which was $120,000 to 51,000. So.
Yeah, so what we did is we asked our department heads to submit their requested budgets, and the mayor and I sit down with the department head and later on by ourselves and try to make a analysis on what can be cut from the requested budget. And, you know, to the credit of the department heads, they put in what they think they need. When we further discuss it, we find out sometimes that there's one-time items that were in, for example, professional services, that are better paid for with one-time revenue, like retained earnings, that can wait until the fall. So you'll see some of that. With regards to lights, we do an analysis of what the bills are currently and what they're projected to be with the last two bills. And based upon current year activity, we're able to make a projection as to what 16 will require. And as we're making these analysis, we're looking at what historically has been spent in a particular line item. For example, lights and power has been pretty flat at 330, 340, 327, that sort of thing. So we take that into consideration. Understandably, the department heads want to be safe, and they want to ask for probably a little bit more sometimes than they may need, which is why you have money flow out at the end of the year into retained earnings. These budgets, like general government, are extremely tight, and we did that obviously to make sure that we were able to maintain the current water rate in this example and wastewater rate in the other enterprise. So they are scrubbed. We do rely on retained earnings to purchase one-time items. Retained earnings is certified in the fall, so that's when we'll be reviewing some of the things that we cut out of the operating budget.
Can I follow up?
Certainly.
Thank you. My other question is that we are continuing to fund the superintendent position. Do we have any You're doing a beautiful job. But I was just curious if we have any plans with
We
regards
thought
to
it was
that?
prudent to fund it. We
Yeah.
thought, and we're going to begin that advertising for that position. We have heard from other communities that this particular position is extremely difficult to fill. We found that with Owen, you know, in the personnel department, and we're going to find it in the water superintendent department as well. So we wanted to be able to fund the position for a year, but understanding that it's going to take a while to get this position filled. But meanwhile, we have to make sure that we have money available for Paul, because Paul's wearing two hats right now and should be compensated for that.
And we don't have any plans on funding the lab manager position?
No, I think that that's been remaining unfunded for a couple of
I know this is the second go-around on that one.
Yep.
But I didn't know if there were any plans to re-implement that position.
Not at this time.
Thank you.
Mr. Thibodeau.
Just to let you know, on the Wading River, every other year, there's going to be a cost associated with that, because now that it's going to be back to where it should be, every 6 months, you have to take off so much sand, and then once you get down to a foot, you have to replace that sand. So every other year, there's going to be a cost that you're going to have to, go back and replace that sand. And, just to give you an idea, the west bed is like over $53,000 just to replace the sand, and the east bed is over $74,000. So there's a preventative maintenance cost there every other year. We won't see it every year, and that was some of the money that was in the professional services this year, which I think we can go into because we're going to go on in July, online in July. I think we can go into the next fiscal year before we have to purchase more sand.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for explaining that to me, that I need a little more information, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
If I could ask Mr. Blair to go first, and then Mr. Blair.
Regarding the filter beds over in Mansfield, I know you're aware that I've made some trips over there in the morning. I just want you to understand, as head of Public Works, not only is it my responsibility to watch these jobs, but it's also legal for me to get in a city truck and go over there.
Absolutely.
Are we square on that?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Thibodeau.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Paul, are all of the licenses up to date for the operators at the water plant?
Yes, we've got
Is there a line item? I was looking through the budget, and I was looking for a line item. I'm presuming, and correct me if I'm wrong, that when someone gets a license renewed, they're reimbursed by the city.
Yes.
So I was looking for a line item.
There's,
If you look, Mr. Thibodeau, in the water department, line 515050, the personnel services line.
Special licenses, okay.
$1,176.
And we usually identify those in the salary sheets at the end of the book.
Yep. All right, thank you.
Are you all set? And Mr. Blair?
Yeah, now that Walter mentioned that, it brings to mind that in previous times we've been here doing the budgets, do we have enough qualified licensed operators to man those positions?
we do. There's a couple of operator in trainings right now. They're still trying to pass their grade ones.
Are these positions being filled with non-licensed operators at any time?
Yeah, yes.
Is there a reason for filling them with non-licensed operators when you have licensed operators not being asked to fill these positions?
Well, the reason that we advertised for, the same thing in wastewater, we advertised for like in wastewater, we advertised for a grade 4. In water, they were advertising for a grade 2 or 3.
We need a 3.
3.
Yep.
And we didn't get anybody qualified that had the credentials to fill the positions. So, same as in wastewater, the last 2 rounds that we hired in operators in wastewater, We were able to hire one operator with a grade 4, and it didn't work out. He's no longer with the city. The last time we posted the position, we just hired a young man. We didn't get one person that had any credentials whatsoever. So what we did was we took him in as an operator in training under the, the agreement that they'd go and pass a grade 1 within 1 year, and then within 2 years' time, pass their grade 4.
I understand that, Paul. I know over the past number of years, we've had trouble getting qualified operators. That's not my question at this point. I understand that, but am I to believe that you have people in those positions unsupervised and are running these shifts that don't have a license?
No, no. The people that are in charge of the shifts have licenses. There may be one shift working with one that doesn't have a license, but it's not required, as long as one person on that shift has a required license.
Okay.
Any other areas for water that specifically that you need to bring to our attention that's up or down, that's significant for changes that we need to be made aware of?
Some of the supplies accounts, we asked for more money, but like Barry was explaining, a lot of them are one-time purchases, and we're gonna address that when we get our retained earnings. Also, I'm looking at my budget, this FY15 budget, and I'm trying to scrape any money that's left in that budget to purchase things that I was looking for in FY16. For example, the Venturis, it's a flow meter. We need a new one in the raw water at the water treatment plant, and we need one also at the Wading River pump station. And looking at my budget, there's money that I can purchase that meter and the services to install it in this year's budget, so that'll come off. That's something that I'm not gonna need on the next year's budget. Even though it's no longer in next year's budget, it's something that I'm not gonna need because we're gonna provide for that this year.
You'll be able to work it through with this budget, with
Yes.
the budget you have in 15.
Yes, there's tires on equipment that we wanted to purchase, the money wasn't there, but I believe I got money in other parts of this budget where I can transfer. I'm gonna be working on that tomorrow to transfer the money so we can purchase new tires for our Komatsu backhoe, our John Deere backhoe. We're also gonna redo the pistons on the old John Deere backhoe and buy new tires for one of the pickup trucks out of this year's budget. So we won't have to worry about going into next year's for that.
Okay. Miss Hegney?
This is for the water, right?
Yes, this is water
I want to make sure it's still, for the repairman, I said it's vacant,
Yes.
but then, are we looking to hire, because then it has the 41,000 for the review. Are we gonna be hiring in that position, or?
We advertised twice in 2 attempts to fill a position. We haven't had anybody that we feel is qualified to go into that position. My maintenance foreman, Peter Blair, I'm working with him to fill that position, and I told Peter that I won't fill a position unless it's somebody that is going to be able to come into the position, help him, and hit the ground running instead of him having to train somebody. We need somebody that's going to be able to go in there and help him. So we've been working on that together, but so far, the 2 rounds, we haven't had anybody. You know, there's some candidates that are people that, you know, could come in and learn, but we're looking for somebody that has experience. We need somebody that, like I said, hit the ground running and be able to go in there and help him out. He needs help.
Okay, great, because I noticed that is one position was the repairman, and at that labor position, the necessities that affects the whole system at the water. Anyway, if you're one person down or 2, it does affect everything. So
Yes.
I hope we get that filled.
Yeah, I do too. We're gonna advertise again.
Awesome.
You know, we thought we had one good prospect and looked promising. The guy looked like he was a Ford mechanic. He was eager to start. And when it came down to offering the job, he he never called us back. He's like, I don't know, he was just toying with us or what, just this, I don't understand it, but it didn't work out. We thought we had it filled and it just fell
I
through.
hope you do.
Yeah.
Sure, because those are definitely in the labor positions too. Okay, good luck.
Can I just ask, where do you advertise for these positions? Or where do you look for?
They were advertised in the Waterworks, I believe in the Waterworks Association. They were advertised on the city's website, but I think we're gonna have to advertise it in the paper.
A little more aggressive.
Yeah.
All right. Are there any other questions regarding the water department and water budget? Seeing no hands, let's move back to the wastewater department.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, again, you get a chance to share with any major ups, downs, changes. I know there's been some adjusting of salary lines or different lines in order to just account for those numbers in different line items. So if we need to, if any of those came up, I noticed that there's this overtime snow removal now has a line item, and that's, I assume that's in order to budget?
Similar to what we talked about earlier, it was the auditor's request that certain overtime items be broken out.
Now, with snow being a separate, snow removal being the 77,000 that we budget every year, and then we deficit spend for snow removal, why would we have a separate snow account within a department?
Because, the snow removal for the enterprises is a lot less. There's a lot less to plow.
Yeah, okay.
The parking lots, the lift stations need to be shoveled out. Things like that are far, far less than the city.
City, okay. So it's not deficit spend, and it's not part of that overall snow removal?
No, keep in mind, these are 24-hour enterprises.
Yeah.
I mean, there are people there all day long, so they have that flexibility to send somebody out and shovel or plow or do something.
Okay.
We used to just have the one line item for overtime, and I don't think a lot of people were aware that being a 24/7 operation and having 14 holidays a year, we have to pay 10 people every holiday overtime. So over $40,000 of my overtime budget went just for scheduled overtime.
Holidays.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
Yeah, that's true.
yeah.
that's right. Again, like police and fire, you can't just shut the water off or the waste, no, that wouldn't be the good thing to do. So it's always gotta be there.
We'd have them marching in the streets.
Yes, that's true. But I appreciate breaking. Yeah.
That too.
Thank you, Peter. But anyway, I appreciate breaking out those line items so that we can see that difference. And it's easier to understand, helps us to understand where it goes. Again, any particular areas that you want to bring to our attention?
Well, I just wanted to say about the wastewater department. The wastewater treatment plant continues to operate exceptionally well. As you may recall, back in September 2013, our plant won an award for Best Medium-Sized Wastewater Treatment Plant in the state of Massachusetts, which we competed with 35 other cities and towns in Massachusetts. Then in October 2014, our plant received a second award from the United States Environmental Protection Agency for Industrial Pretreatment Excellence. Competing for this award were over 500 other cities and towns within New England, and Attleboro took it. So we were the only ones to get that award. So we were pretty proud of that. Our full-scale nitrogen pilot plant has been such a success. It meets and succeeds the new limits handed down by the EPA. For $750,000 investment that the council approved to upgrade. And some innovative, out-of-the-box thinking by us down at the treatment plant. The city's saved $40 to $50 million of that would otherwise had to spend on another upgrade.
Which we had just completed.
I think that's an exceptional
That's-
statement right there. That is incredible. As you all remember, when we built this plant, DEP said, or EPA said, we're not sure what limit you guys should build it to. So they gave us no guidance. We built it, and the ink hadn't dried on the bond authorization. They came down and said, oh, by the way, here's your new limit.
Yeah.
So Paul and his engineers came up with a very unique way, out-of-the-box thinking way of trying to meet those limits by using a pilot program, and it's worked tremendously well.
Absolutely. So, working together with the city as a whole, with the mayor and the council and everybody else involved, we're able to reap the benefits from this. It's been really, it's worked out well, very well for the city. The design has been completed, and the wastewater department will be seeking appropriation to construct a new 5-acre sludge landfill. The construction should commence in the fall. The savings for on-site sludge disposal opposed to the off-site is about 2 to 1. So we're saving, for every million, we're saving $500,000 on using our own disposal site.
Sure.
So, and we're also going to be able to construct a landfill, a 5-acre landfill sell for, it's approximately $3 million, and that'll last us for the next 10 to 12 years. So it's something that's going to be coming up. That's another savings to the city. And, again, I just want to thank the mayor and the city council for backing us on these projects. Without the backing of everyone here, we wouldn't have been able to move forward on these, and I just wanted to thank everybody for that.
Excellent. Mr. Conti?
2 things to say. I'll ask the question first. The 5-acre site is going to be to the west of the plant, near the Seekonk line, is that right? Where the outflow is?
No, actually, it's going to be, when you're going in and the dog park's on the left?
Yep.
To the left of the dog park.
Way up there.
Yes.
It's all wooded right now.
Near the
It'll,
Under the power lines, or?
yeah, the power lines, it'll
Driveway.
border the
Okay, it's all
industrial
woods.
park that's
Yep.
over there,
So that'll take care of 10 years.
at least.
Yeah. And the other comment I wanted to make, Paul, was that with such an award-winning performance in the wastewater plant, how can anyone have any problem with the budget? You know what I mean? Come on, give me a break. You saved the city $40 million. I don't even feel like looking at this thing.
Right. Can I have that in writing?
I have nothing more to
That's
say.
a monumental statement.
Monumental statement. Mrs. Priest.
It's interesting.
That's big.
And we all recognize it.
I want to wait till we have our general discussion.
It's interesting to me to compare and contrast the wastewater, which you've been in charge of wastewater for how long?
I've been there 35 years.
And the water department, and I can see the changes coming through on the water department side under your tutelage, and I appreciate that. I agree with Councilor Conti, so yet another tremendous statement for this evening, that your budget, it's like a work of art, quite frankly. So thank you very much for preparing that for us, and thank you for the work that you do. I have one other question back over to wastewater, but I'll ask it after. It's about water meters, because that was cut. So I just wanted to know about that, but I can ask that later. I'll send you an email.
All right.
Well, we're still meeting, and we still have 10 minutes before the next one's scheduled, but
We've moved on from we've moved on from water. It's fine.
We can always end early, it's okay.
No, I understand, I hear you. And Paul, I do want to thank you. The work you do over there has been phenomenal. I've always been amazed that you've been able to work every piece of equipment to its bitter end. Remember, you used to put out your truck when it was catching on fire and still drive it afterwards. So I want to thank you for all you do to keep water, wastewater safe, and our city safe. And I get into the 10-Mile River, and I know you do an amazing job to make sure that that's clean. So it's just a wonderful thing. So thank your employees, your staff,
I will.
for all they do.
I will.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're because Mr. Blair's taking a brief. I'm just going to take a 3 or 4 minutes, 5-minute,
Yeah,
little 5-minute
recess.
recess, and then we'll have fire department up last. So, because I don't have a committee, I can't even ask for a
Right,
recess.
yep.
Department's on
So I
page-
had asked,
Fire department's on page 32.
I was supposed to.
All right, so while you're here and we're taking a recess, so the water meters
Good work, Paul.
No, Mr.
went to
Ken-
20 grand. I'll ask. No, I'll ask. You go, Paul. I got
It's right here.
I'm just curious,
Gotta make sure to get
I'm good, how are you? I'm good.
2. Committee's back in order. I appreciate that.
Thanks for the time, Brian.
You're welcome. We had a chance to take a brief break. We're a little ahead of schedule, which is good. We have last department tonight is Fire Department, which begins on the regular budget book, page 32. We welcome Chief LaChance. Chief, how are you?
I'm well, how are you?
Good, thank you. I want to welcome you here. You know the routine by now. I'm going to ask for major ups, downs, and changes in your budget, things that you need to alert us to for significant impacts to the budget, again, up or down. And then I'll open up to questions from my colleagues. So welcome, thanks for coming in.
Well, thank you. I'll get right to it. Looking at the FY16 mayor's recommended budget, comparing that to the FY15 revised budget. If you look at the salary and wages, we're at $5.5 million and change, which is a $581,000 increase over the revised budget of FY15. That's a little bit misleading. Some of the revised budget from 15 is transferred into LOD.
Okay.
So there was about $150,000 transferred from salaries into LOD in FY15. Also transferred probably close to $300,000 from the salaries into overtime.
Okay.
So in actuality, the recommended budget for FY16 is level funded less the contractual raises. So it's pretty close to just, there's no extra personnel. It's in fact, it's actually a few less firefighters at the beginning of the fiscal year than we were budgeted for in FY15. Some of that may seem a little confusing because, we had to reorg last year. So just take a few minutes to kind of explain where we stand with that so you have a better idea of how the staffing is working right now. Last year, the plan was to hire 10 firefighters that was independent of the reorg that was in the budget for FY16 for July 1st. We were not able to get 10. We were only able to get 7. So I started FY15, short 3 firefighters. We also had in last year's budget 3 additional firefighters for September 1st. So as soon as we got the 7 hired, we started the process to try to get the 3 that we were short plus the 3 for September 1st. We only ended up getting 2, and we didn't get them on until January. So the hole just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. On top of that, right now, today, I have 2 firefighters out with long-term injuries and 3 at the academy. So that means right now, I'm short 5 just to keep every station in truck and service. So I'm spending 5 times 42, 210 hours a week of overtime just to keep everything in service. That's without vacation, sick leave, anything else that pops up. And that's one of the problems that we run into is when we try to hire, it used to be in the past, it was a lot easier to hire firefighters. The statewide list right now has over 5,000 names of people that pass the civil service test that want to be firefighters in Massachusetts.
Overtime, it's always been a question of mine.
Absolutely.
I said to Ron, I could never get him to answer it, so I don't know.
I'll answer it.
I don't know if I'm going to get you to answer it.
I will answer it.
And Ron and I are close friends, so I mean, this is nothing that way. What is your opinion on hiring just paramedics?
If you had asked me that 5 years ago, I thought that it was the right move. But one of the things that's changed is the state has switched to the national curriculum for paramedicine, which means we get them all super certified and they could take off and go to another department. But I don't believe it's as likely.
I'm a firm believer in hiring locally. Anybody that sat with me on the council, Barry, in the past, I mean, I've been an advocate of hire local, whether it's fire, police, park, water, whatever. I think in my opinion, they make better employees because they're attached to the city. Their next door neighbor is a taxpayer. I just think it falls in line much better.
I can tell you, my experience in 5 years as chief would
Well,
like 5 years ago, I don't know that I would have thought it was. I mean, I like local people.
We hope so.
It's not. I mean, local people. Before we could get local guys that were paramedics.
Yeah.
That's not as commonplace now. It's because, I think a lot of it is because it's much harder to get into paramedic school and to pay for it.
Have you found that you get paramedics that you have, that when they get to that point, they can opt out of the paramedic field? They do that?
Yeah, and that's a good point, because one of the reasons the ordinance, I believe, was drafted the way that it was, it was actually a step in the right direction. It helped us get over a hump where we were having some problem be managed, because we have to do a lot of quality assurance now. So we have to make sure they do enough IVs, enough intubations, enough 12-lead cardiac interpretations. 75 paramedics doing that, you have a natural skills degradation, which isn't really what we want. So we're trying to, balance the number so that there's enough skills for them, that they're the most highly skilled, and at the same time, not burning them out.
If I might just
Follow up, John? Go ahead.
The guys that, do they drop their certification, or do they hold their certification? when
If they were hired in civil service,
Yeah,
off of a paramedic list,
yeah.
they call that a preferential certification,
Yeah,
they can't drop it.
okay.
Okay, so one of the things that was collectively bargained is there's 2 levels now of EMS providers, but to simplify, you can say paramedics. The front line, their stipend is actually now it's up to $7,000, and the reason is that they don't get any more overtime or time off to do any of their refreshers and all of their training. It was one of the things that we bargained that I wanted, because it's hard to project the costs for providing that service when everything's on an overtime basis. So we figured out how much time they need to go recertify. They have to do it off duty. There's no more compensation for that. It's tied into their their salary, basically, right? So the guys that drop out of the rotation still have to maintain the certification.
Okay.
If they were hired.
If they were
under-
hired
under
that way.
Mrs.
Mrs. Hegney.
No, sorry, I'm tired too.
We all are.
Parika, how-
So I'm enjoying this conversation. I'm learning an awful lot. This isn't something that we've had an opportunity to really discuss, so I was glad that you referenced the ordinance. So now I'm looking at the ordinance, which I don't have the updated since we did the reorg. However, I believe that this would still be accurate. It says, until the city employs the number of licensed paramedics required by the Massachusetts Office of Emergency Medical Services. How many is that?
There's actually not a number that the state requires. The state, OEMS requires a number based on how many ambulances you're gonna run. So 10 years ago, they were fine with us running with a paramedic and a basic EMT and an ambulance. Now they have what's called point of entry protocols and treatment protocols, that any significant medical call, we have to have 2 paramedics at the scene. So what was happening is that we were putting a paramedic and an EMT on the ambulance, and we were forced to find another paramedic that, might have been on another truck. We had to send them. We still send the help when it's necessary. That's why a fire engine will show up. If somebody's really sick, we send 5 people. But there's 2 paramedics on the ambulance all the time, so even if everybody is out on calls, the 2 paramedics always show up together.
So we don't have a number.
Well, no, I'm sorry. So the number is.
Because then that would be a better, because as you said, it says, how do we, my question is, how do we fix this problem? If we have a
OEMS
national shortage, then we need to do
doesn't care
something.
How many we have. They just say that I have to make sure that we have 2 paramedics to show up to a call that needs 2 paramedics. Where the number comes into play is civil service. So civil service, in order for me to ask for paramedics when we hire, I have to show them how many ambulances are in service. And the formula they use is 2 per ambulance and then 1 extra. So I can have, with our 3 ambulances, that would be 6, plus 1 extra per each one, that's 9. And you can multiply that by our 4 shifts, so the number is 36.
Okay.
When I have 36, I can't ask civil service for more, unless I tell them some of these people are going through attrition, are going to no longer be.
But in the reverse, we could then hire people who are not paramedics.
Yes. We probably, I guess we probably could. We might need to have Bob Mangiarati look at the ordinance, I don't know.
But that's fine. Well, if we're gonna try and make steps towards this, because the overtime account is crazy.
Yep.
We have no future to change that, because we have a national shortage of paramedic firefighters.
The problem is that you also have to understand, if we hired, say, just EMTs, I can't really put them on the ambulance.
I'm not looking for that.
I'm just saying, so we have to have a plan in place, because if they're riding on a fire engine for 5 years, it's going to create a problem with the rest of the employees. There needs to be a plan that these guys have to get certified.
Let's get a plan.
Happy to look at it. It's actually something that the mayor and I have been discussing a little bit, because
It just seems that we're in a rock and a hard place that we're never gonna be able to dig ourselves out of unless we make corrective changes. Go.
Mr. Conti?
$1 million overtime simply is not acceptable. Plain and simple. I'm surprised that you and me aren't having wars over this.
well,
I mean, I understand, you've gone through the issue, and I understand it's a very complex problem. But at $1 million a year overtime, we're out of control in the fire department. Even the police department at $500,000 overtime is a lot of money.
let me, before you say things that are not totally accurate, let me respond to that, because we're not out of control, we're understaffed,
Correct.
okay? So, the truth of the matter is that the firefighters should be thanked, because not only do they get to work this much overtime, I make them, okay? The reason fire stations stay open is because I don't let them go home. This isn't like they all want to do this, they're told they have to stay. So, the solution, if the overtime is the problem, is more firefighters. Now, people other than me think that overtime is less expensive than employees, and, maybe Barry can explain that with his post-retirement costs and stuff. I can't say whether or not it is, but the overtime, in 2009, we had 5 more firefighters, 5 more uniformed employees than we do today. That's why in 2009, the total overtime was over $800,000 for the fire department, between regular overtime, a grant, and EMS overtime. It was over $800,000 in 2009. The total this year is actually $1.4 million from all sources. In 10 years, it will be $2 million.
You all set, Mr. Conti, or?
No, our budget message is gonna have to address this.
Okay.
But understand, it's not,
Do you feel like you've got enough information to be able to put something in a budget message?
I do.
Okay.
I do.
I just,
Because I'm not gonna tell the chief how to run his department.
No.
But I can put into the budget message that the concern is twofold. Yes, we're concerned about the money, but I certainly want to thank the chief and the department and the firefighters for maintaining, even through overtime, maintaining the safety of our citizens.
I agree completely, Counselor.
And the fact that we're keeping the 4th fire station open, which wasn't when I got in here 12 years ago. So
That's what I remember, is that in prior years, when overtime was getting to be such a big problem, the discussion from the council was shut a station, and nobody wanted to do that.
and let me explain to you why. Because Tuesday morning, right after Memorial Day, at 5 a.m., the station that I would close if I don't have the funding that I need to is Briggs Corner, okay? There was a structure fire there Tuesday morning at 5 a.m.
Yes.
If that station weren't staffed, that house burns to the ground. That's a fact, that's not even, now, it doesn't happen often, but that's what we pay for. Saturday morning, there was a structure fire on West Street, 1 a.m. If we're not staffed, that burns to the ground. That's how come other communities, when you read the newspaper and they have a fire, that's why they burn into the ground. That's why these raging infernos happen. Doesn't happen here because the stations are staying open. Despite the difficulty and the cost and all the other things, that's the truth. Our ISO rating has improved because of a lot of the things that we're doing. I mean, it's all tied together. So believe me, I fully expected, a lot of discussion about the overtime, because it's $1.4 million from all sources, and it's something that has to be discussed, but the only solution is more people or closed stations.
I want to make sure that you understand that I'm not criticizing you or
Oh, I
the fire
understand that.
department.
I understand
Because
that.
I think we have a fabulous department. I really do. I mean, I was at a fire today in Taunton where a man was cooking some fish and his shed caught fire, and I could not believe the damage. To see propane tank brass valves melted to a puddle and the propane tanks exploded. I mean, they were all opened at the top. I'm sure you've seen what I'm talking about. Both my wife and I have our greatest fear of all fears is fear of fire. And I do not want to do anything to make your job harder. That's not my job. My job is to ensure the taxpayers that all avenues are being taken to protect their tax dollars. So maybe we need to give you the authorization to hire 16 people. I don't know what the answer is, Chief. I really don't know what the answer is. And what you're telling me is that in 2 years, there's gonna be $2.5 million overtime. Thank you for telling me that. Because we need to prepare everybody for that.
That's just, that's contractual.
If that's the reality, that's the reality. I got it. And I appreciate you telling us that now. Because I don't want to close a fire station. I don't want to close Briggs Corner. That heart attack victim at Ponce at Hewlett Field is still alive today because that station is there. What's that worth?
Can't
You
put a
know,
price tag.
No, and one of the things that has to be taken into consideration when you look at those numbers is we can't be compared to a lot of other fire departments. We can't be compared to Taunton because we provide EMS. So one of the things that's different, we provide EMS, and the ambulance service generates a significant amount of revenue, which certainly offsets the budget. We'll be probably close to $2.5 million in EMS revenue this year. So, when you put it all together, it's, if you take that off the top of the fire department's budget, I think we're actually a pretty good deal for the service that we provide.
And I think it's important also to remember that what the chief is experiencing in 15 was the resignations, were the retirements, were the line of duties. Those are circumstances that happen in one fiscal year that have a tremendous impact on our overtime. As the chief gets candidates on board, that problem is going to go away to a certain extent. Not fully, it never will, but when you have only 60 men, and that's the minimum you need, and you have to backfill with overtime because you haven't been able to hire 3, or people are out on line of duty, that's what causes a lot of this problem. And I think you're basically a victim of circumstances during FY15, when just bad luck with the hiring and with the resignations and so forth. But I think as we go forward in 16, you'll see the people coming on board, and once they're trained and everything else, you'll see less of this, I would imagine. But you still have an aging force. There's mandatory retirement at 65. You do have an aging force. So we're going to be having to hire new firefighters and paramedics as we go forward.
And I think this council is open to discussions about the hiring process to make sure that not only are the fire stations properly staffed, but also paramedics, and that we move forward in that discussion to make sure that the greatest possible number of positions are filled, not the least number of positions are filled, to be able to operate within the city, so that those positions are in fact filled, whether with firefighters, with paramedics, and how they go through and become paramedics, and whatever we need to do in that discussion to move that issue forward.
But please understand, when you're a firefighter or you're a police officer, you have mandatory retirement at 65. It doesn't mean everyone retires. We can plan for that. In fact, I think we have an employee that will reach 65 during FY16. We can plan for that because we know that's a mandatory retirement. But tomorrow, somebody could walk into the chief's office and saying, "I'm out of here." And that causes a ripple effect on the entire department. Or someone could get hurt. That causes a ripple effect on the entire department. I think that's what the chief is experiencing during 15.
Sure.
Yeah, I think one of the things that is important is I developed a spreadsheet so that I can try to predict overtime costs. And I've used this now for several years, and it's within 5% accuracy. At minimum staffing, and assuming nobody was going to the fire academy, nobody was out hurt, minimum staffing of the 60 firefighters plus the officers, just for contractual coverage of vacation, I need $710,000 in overtime. Okay, so that's the cost. Now, the solution is put 4 guys in every truck, and then I can go down to 3. But that's far more expensive. It's far more beneficial operationally. I mean, this is very difficult for the shift commanders to manage, because every single day, out of the 15 firefighters they have with injuries and stuff, 4 or 5 out. It's hard to plan things for your shift, training for your core group of firefighters when 1/3 of them may not be there. It becomes very difficult, So that expense is present. That $700,000 in total overtime is there, without sick leave, without LOD, without bereavement, without any other stuff, at that minimum staffing level. I just want to make sure that everyone understands that. And to put it in perspective, 4 extra bodies 4 extra firefighters would drop that total. The total for sick leave, I mean, the total with 60 firefighters with all leave, I'm taking an average of leave over the last 3 fiscal years, would be $1,291,000. That's what I would need in total for FY16, without anything much different than has happened in the previous years. 4 extra firefighters who are already all trained, don't have to go to the academy, that number drops to $961,000. Okay? You do another 4, it drops. There's a point of, where you don't get the return on your investment. An extra 50 firefighters doesn't save that much, but 4 to 6 extra, 8 extra on a department is a number that is probably cost effective.
Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Hagney?
Thank you, Chief, for coming in. So when we're doing the overtime, if someone works their regular, how many days in a rotation?
They work a 24-hour shift, their day off and a 24-hour shift.
So you have 24-hour shift, day off, 24-hour shift, day off. So then, for the overtime, can somebody work a 24-hour shift and then do another shift? Is there any
We don't have any policy that prohibits
regulations or
it.
policy?
Because to be honest, usually when we run into problems, it's on the middle day. Somebody works a 24-hour shift, and then that middle day is, if there's a vacancy, we'll have probably 35,000 hours of overtime this fiscal year.
Okay.
That's almost 700 hours a week. That's 100 hours a day. When you have 100 hours of overtime a day, the problem that you run into is that people don't want to work it as much. So it's hard to get people, which is why I have to force them. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it does, because I was just trying to figure out rotations and stuff, because I know residents have brought up with overtime, and I mean, coming from where even my father, in a police family, understanding rotations and overtime.
They average 42 hours a week before overtime.
Okay, because I know sometimes it's, people have brought up, does every community have a 24-hour shift?
99% do.
99%?
Yeah, I mean, despite the theories that it's not cost-effective, it's the most cost-effective staffing, because the model for staffing fire departments is not based on volume, because you'll hear people say, well, at night you don't have as many calls, so you should have less firefighters. That doesn't work, because the risk to life is so much greater at night that you have to have the staffing in those off hours. The reason that the fire service evolved the way that it did is because they can't really afford to pay the salaries that the career would dictate if they worked 8-hour shifts. So the benefit of the 24-hour shifts is that you get to have the personnel you need on the overnight shifts, with the theory that they get some sleep. But we do close to 30 calls a day. There's not a lot of sleeping going on at the firehouses anymore.
But so even if they did like a 12-hour shift or something, you still have a man that they would, from residents and constituents, maybe you can expound a little bit and explain, because I think sometimes people are like, if I could do this, I would change this, and the overtime would change. And a lot of it comes back to, they say, well, they have 24-hour shifts.
Absolutely. Well, I mean,
and they got to fill, because then you're paying overtime for 24 hours.
Absolutely. If it were 8-hour shifts, they would take vacation 3 times as often. If they were out sick, they'd be taking sick time 3 times as often. They'd just be taking 8 hours, so the numbers would come out the same. We have only about 5,000 hours of sick time for 90 employees. And when you take that into consideration, that, I had a firefighter break his leg. He's out for 3 months. It's not like another job where they can come in and still work. So, 5,000 hours of sick time for a department of 90 employees is not exuberant at all. So that's really, there's not a whole bunch of solutions other than extra people or just pay.
Well, thank you, because I think even expanding on that is just the misconception of solving a problem that some may seem that you can pinpoint, and it's something over the years that even
or the other problem, and it just doesn't seem like it's something that Attleboro supports. I certainly would support it as a chief. The other is that, when 2 guys are out, I just close the station. But the problem with that is that, I could tell you, if I were faced with that decision today, I would close Briggs Corner. I don't say that it's a good idea, but I would close it because the Twin Village Station is close to the chemical company. Engine 5 is the second engine due in for any fire for headquarters in South Attleboro. So as critically important as that station is, that would have to be the first one closed. And you talked about somebody had a heart attack there. We've had a cardiac arrest that they resuscitated. Several structure fires, but the one was just last week, and that's unfortunately for all of us, and actually you more than me, is the other folks that have to decide, how much money is the amount to allocate. But without this funding that's in front of you, that's what would have to happen. And I can tell you honestly, even with what's presented in front of you, there's going to be some challenges for me because it's actually not, it's tight.
And you brought up, some good points too, because I know even my own family, we've had to call the ambulance. My father had a heart attack, and luckily Twin Village was there, but then less than a minute, they were right there. And even my mom, Miss Winterfell, they were there. And I think we have such high constituent services, and our constituents are used to that, which is great for the residents, but on the other side of it is the financial aspect of it. So I just think the overtime is not something that could be easily squashed or solved, and you never know who's going to be out, who's going to retire, all the variables. So,
If I may, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. I don't want to belabor this anymore, but I will. I think we've when we changed the ordinance to hire just paramedics, we went down a road that has put us in this position that we're in now, that the chief has to contend with. Being a former firefighter myself, I didn't support that. And this is one of the reasons why. Because every fire is different. You can pre-plan and pre-plan and pre-plan. You don't know what you're gonna find when you roll up on a scene. Every circumstance that a department head has to deal with is different. A fire chief who has to manage that many personnel on a 24-hour shift, which rotates. You put him in, anyone who's in his position, you put them in a situation that they have no solution to except throwing money at it. That's all they can do, because they have to keep the personnel there. So, I think, I think this needs further discussion, Mr. Chairman, but I think that...
I don't think it's on the budget. I think it's gonna be in ordinance committee, something else for Mr. Denley to work on, down the line as
Well, I
we...
think this, the chief has ideas. I know that the mayor probably has ideas. There are probably some options out there that can be looked at for us to tweak our ordinances a bit in order to try to address the money problem and the personnel problem at the same time without hurting the protection that we have for our citizens.
And I also don't want to cause issues within your department between your staff. So there's got to be some issues that certainly...
Yeah, some of those things obviously need to be discussed, bargained and whatever.
Yeah.
Just one of the things to keep in mind is that any of those options, I believe they may have a long-term savings, but they're not less expensive next year, and that's important. That's part of the problem, is that if I hired 8 people that I have to send to paramedic school, I have to pay the salaries, pay for paramedic school, and cover them when they're there, or else I still have the same holes. So it's much like when I send the guys to the fire academy now. If I hired 8 firefighters right now, I have to ask this honorable body for $15,000 to $17,000 in overtime in the training account to cover their salary when they go to the fire academy. So this is about, investing, and kind of a plan. And I can assure you that the mayor and I have had lengthy conversations. He's well aware of the issues, and, we've both been exploring some options to see how we can address it going forward.
Okay, and I think that the council's open to that discussion.
Okay.
Is what I'm getting from this seat. Mrs. Parika?
Well, I think if there's the possibility, when we explore this further, it will be less burdensome, and you won't have to force your firefighters to serve overtime, and there will be better, we'd be satisfied by reaping other benefits from that we'd have a more satisfied fire department, and that people would stay on longer, and we don't have to put people through the academy and then have them leave 5 minutes later, because that's a cost that incurs constantly. And that's just throwing money after money after money that we don't really want to do anymore.
I do think that the attrition issue that we experienced, the loss of some of the newer firefighters, the last group that we hired, 7, several of them were pretty far away. They bought
Right.
houses in Attleboro. So, you know, I'm a transplant, so, you know, like I said, I support the local people, but I'm actually a guy that got the job because of that ordinance. But I moved to Attleboro. You know, so, I mean, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, but I actually think right now with the people that we're attracting, some of the changes that are made in the department, the reorg was a huge part of that, is that we're getting more people now that are, even if they're not local, they're not looking to leave, and I would be really happy to see if we could expand that to offer something up for the local people too, to reap some of the benefits.
Great. Okay. Moving on from these two issues, salary and overtime.
I had those highlighted, I expect.
Well, certainly, so did my colleagues. But other areas where we need to be made aware of any issues?
A couple of things that might look a little bit different, the severance and sick leave. That's a line item for the contractual sick leave incentive that we pay each year, as well as the, when firefighters retire, that's right where I pay their sick leave balance and vacation balance out of. I expect 2 firefighters to retire this fiscal year, so that difference in there is the addition of what they would be entitled to for the severance. The education and training account is about $30,000 less than the revised amount for FY15. We're anticipating sending 6 firefighters to the academy. Last year it was 10, so that's why that number is dropped. A new item, I'm kind of skipping down. If you need me to go back, just let me know, but maintenance of radios, that's a new item for the fire department. One of the things that the mayor has done is we've met with a vendor. I won't say the name of the vendor, but we've met with a vendor to look at the radio infrastructure for the, not just the police and fire, but DPW and everybody. And one of the things that we're going to be doing is a maintenance contract citywide for all of the radio equipment, the stuff at Ides Hill, all of the equipment at my fire station, the police station. That, I don't know if the mayor's done his budget or not yet, but that's covered in his budget. That maintenance agreement for the fire department will be included in that. That $2,500 is a fee. This company will do what they call radio clinics. So we can have our portable and our truck radios serviced every 2 to 3 years. They actually have to be tuned so that they actually work efficiently. That $2,500 will allow us to have 1/2 of our radios serviced annually each year. So that's part of the contract price they'll be giving us. Let's see if this, professional services is at 0 for FY16. You can see there was almost $1,500 in FY15. I transferred some money in for architectural services for looking at some minor renovations at headquarters. We've done some of them. Just because of the size of the building, I can't do anything at headquarters without an architectural drawing. So we had an architect come in and gave us some drawings for, simple things, and if we can find some funding to do them, we'll at least have the plans all set for it. Employee training, that's the account for college tuition, and it was $6,000 this year, FY15 revised. FY16, it's up to 19,000 and change. I have.
You're talking tuition and books?
Yeah, tuition and books, yeah. I can give you the exact number here. I have 9 firefighters have submitted letters saying, requesting to take 4 classes this year based on the contract. So the 9 firefighters, 4 courses, 36 classes they're gonna take at the $540 for the tuition. That's where that number comes from. I require them each year in April to submit a letter of intent if they're looking to take college classes. Online services, we're upgrading to 4G wireless for some of our tough books and tablets, and we'll have a couple of additional ones that will have that service. So right now we're on the old 3G Nextel network, so this will allow us to upgrade.
Nextel's still around. Who knew?
Yeah, it's funny little looking things that plug in. See if there's anything else that really sticks out. I don't have anything else that sticks out. If you have any,
Any
it's
other
all pretty.
questions from my colleagues?
The education piece is, but it's good that the education is being taken up on too. It's good to see, even though we're paying as an obligation, it's good to see that the firefighters and
Yeah,
the
you
department
know,
are
the
going.
more educated the workforce,
Yeah.
you know,
I
usually.
encourage that.
Yeah, I do too. And we've been pretty fortunate with the guys doing that, with taking classes at the Mass Fire Academy.
I saw a very nasty car hit a pole on my street last Friday night. 3 people in the vehicle had to be taken out, and it was, thank God they were okay, but it was the whole process by your department and as well as police to secure the scene, make sure everybody was all right, and get the rescue and the personnel in there, work to cut the car apart and get the people out. Was interesting. I don't want to say the word exciting, but it was very, captivating to watch it. You knew they were all right. They were talking. They were all right physically, but they needed to get out of the vehicles, and your personnel helped them. So, to see them in action and not be at a staged action, that was it was a sight. And all 3 ambulances were there, and your trucks were there, and plenty of personnel to make sure that the people were okay, and that the area was okay, because now there was a telephone pole hanging and had to be replaced. So I want to thank your staff for what I was able to see, and handle it incredibly professionally. So thank you for that. Thank your staff for.
I appreciate that.
I appreciate the safety that they do provide.
I'll just share one quick story with you before I go back to the baseball field, if it's not dark. We had some gentlemen from Providence Fire Department at the South Attleboro Fire Station a few weeks ago, teaching a class, and they were listening to our radios going off, and they were pretty shocked at how busy the Attleboro Fire Department has become. Major component of it is EMS, absolutely, but I get a shift report every morning by email, so I know what happened the day before in numbers. I can't tell you how many days I'm getting a report that says they responded to 30 emergencies. 30 in 24 hours is, one of the conversations I've had with the mayor, and I would offer it up to you just to take into consideration, as the city grows, not only can you not look at reducing service, but we actually have to start to talk about providing additional service.
Expanding
The
service.
town of Fairhaven runs 3 ambulances full-time because they have that need for it. We're not at the point now, I don't want to make it sound like we need it just yet, but these are conversations that we have to make sure we're ready for, that as the town continues to grow and the population becomes older, that they need our services more. And one thing that I'm not comfortable as a chief, I'm not comfortable relying on mutual aid for regular incidents. Mutual aid is intended for major disasters. A town has a moral, ethical, and probably legal obligation to provide whatever we define as the necessary services. And if you get to that point, and we're certainly not there yet, but again, the trend is, 10 years from now, what we operate for ambulances may not be enough, And I've had that conversation with the mayor, he knows it, and that's how his vision is always 5-10 years down the road, so I'm sure we'll be well suited to make it all work.
Great. Again, thank you for coming in. Thank you for all
Have
you
a
do.
good night.
Move to adjourn. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. We're adjourned at 7:53. Thank you.
I'm being reiterated.
It's nice to see the sharp. Excuse me.
Bless you.
Thanks for answering those, because those are residents that have asked, and I think sometimes they think they.
I have to